We're now joined by SABC correspondent in Lesotho, Rapelang Radebe, who's in the capital, Maseru. Rapelang, thanks very much indeed for joining us. How are people in Lesotho reacting to this very sad news?
Nade, Peter, thank you very much. Yes, indeed. I think I was bombarded with calls this afternoon. For people who literally knew him, you will understand that Nade was a lecturer at National University, and he was also a priest in his very early days in the 70s. He spent about 2 years in Lesotho, and then afterwards, that is when he really went more international, and others will say maybe Lesotho was his launch pad. So there are people, I just drove quite a distance to go and meet one of those gentlemen who was speaking passionately because he worked very close to him. And I got to a privilege now, maybe even to get to go and interview a few more others, and that really speaking about him as such a towering figure who has made huge influence. But you will know that mostly he came several times to mediate in our very troublesome political situations in Lesotho, especially one would remember 1994, Professor Nkusamaha, who has just started his party, also sending his condolences and say he remembers that it was in 1994 when he was sent by President Mandela to come and intervene in political situations of Lesotho. He was able also to sort of neutralize the situation when the king was sent abroad, literally against his will, if one may say. And this is where the National Party and the Congress Party were having issues. He was there, right in front, to try and neutralize the situation. I was able to meet him in around 2012 when the first coalition was initiated in Lesotho, and he literally made the political parties to sign the peace accord that said whatever the outcome of the 2012 elections will be, people will accept the will of the people. So his role in Lesotho, much more significant, especially if you can go and read his book. I think from the gentleman you were talking to earlier on, I was able to get some insights about that. So there's so much in that debate.
Well, let's talk about your personal interaction then, because, you know, there are some people who walk into a room and they just have this presence and this way. How did you feel when you met him?
Well, honestly, I will tell you, because he was such a revered bishop at the time when he came. People were literally, walking really carefully around his place, but he would just crack a joke in the middle of a very heated discussion. He would crack a joke and people would just loosen up. At the time, you know, especially when the political parties were preparing for what is unexpected and ultimately came to a coalition, it was a bit tense. But I remember after the signing ceremony, and it was a bit tense, and I said, I'm just going to take a picture with him. And he said, of course, but you are just a bit tall, so don't stand too close to me, you know. And then afterwards, everybody, I think, was more relaxed, were able to start taking pictures. The journalists, mostly junior journalists back at home, who really could not even think of going as close as possible to me. He said, come on. And somebody really had to intervene, because now he was spending most of this time with people signing autographs and taking pictures with him. That is around in 2012.
Talking about autographs and taking pictures, one of the things I noticed around Madiba is that people that we considered icons and famous people would often become quite taken by Madiba. Was that the same, you know, with all these politicians and very highly regarded people, that they too found themselves looking up to and in reverence of this man?
I really want to agree with you on that one, because, look, the minute he wore his reverend status, his bishop, and summoned the pulpit, he was a totally different person, commanding. But for some reason, as soon as that part is over, it's like he puts off the clothes and now he becomes very interactive, one-to-one, looks you in the eyes, and he wants to know more from what you want. If you ask him one question, he will just spread it on and on. So he really needed somebody, an assistant close to him to try and keep him, to make it short, because otherwise he just enjoyed being around. So I think coming to Lesotho at that particular time, even an opportunity to get that close to him at the time was still considered a rather, let's call it a holy space. But now coming to hear a little bit about people who went closer and closer at the time of his national university. At the time it was called University of Botswana, Lesotho and Swaziland. A lot of them will say he was the most fulfilling person to be around him. So even people who were of high caliber would really come and feel like once he gets into the room, he lights up the space and you can feel his presence.
And I suppose for him to be sent to try and deal with some very difficult issues meant that he commanded significant respect, that people would listen when he spoke.
Absolutely right. I think also with the fact that he had lived in Lesotho, he understood Lesotho. I mean, he came here in his more very vibrant stage of his life. So he was like deep, he was on the grassroots level. So he really understood the issues around there. And he was somebody who was really, who could call you by a name and call you to order when things needed to be, because he will start giving history of how he knows the parent of that one, how this one. So I think immediately when you start addressing a person on a one-to-one basis, it sort of changes the atmosphere, really. And I think one of the reasons that where his advice was taken to heed of, people really put some commitment onto it, because to him it wasn't just another call or duty. It was more of a commitment. People related far better with him than when it was just another person who is sent, to mitigate in the situation. So he put his foot in it. When he needed to joke, he would joke, but when he had to be serious, he really was serious. The Reverend Kheche that I spoke to him earlier on, he says he actually, he's the one who married him. And he said he took some time to really talk to him into issues of marriage, the importance, the quality of family. And he said whenever they go through challenges, he says his face comes to him, and he says he remembers almost every word of encouragement. That is why even today he was saying, you can look at my family, you see how happy we are. It's because that man, I can never let him down.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about the people of Lesotho. Is there a large Anglican following that would have followed him as a man of the cloth?
Huge, quite huge. The Anglican Church, going back, the relationship between Lesotho and British, quite close. So quite a network. And all the way to the king. I understand at one point, the current His Majesty actually stayed with him in London, I think during his school days and stuff. So to him, the monarchy and was quite a close affair. I'm still waiting, because I heard that international minister is going to send the speech, I think, from Lesotho. If possible, I think we will probably get to hear from the king himself, because the relationship is quite personal at that point. So if things go well, we'll probably hear from the king. But many other people who really say they served firsthand on first-time basis with him. So the network, I think we are yet to hear more of the condolences. Look, one thing I think one needs to note regarding Lesotho, you'll understand that the bishop really advocated for women to take part and become priests. And the Anglican Church of Lesotho, for the first time, has got a female priest who was inaugurated just a few weeks ago. So talk about a dream really coming true. It is the first. And others are saying she will probably in no time be following in his footsteps. So probably the Anglican Church might have the first bishop who is actually rises to the highest position. I'm not saying that will happen, but they are saying it looks like the pattern is sort of replicating itself yet again.
So by and large, Lesotho and Basotho will be remembering the arch fondly.
Fondly, much more fondly. In fact, I think I'm tempted to attend the first service of the year in the very chapel that he used to serve. And I think there will probably be a moment of dedication, of devotion. But talking about him here, I mean, it's more of a one-to-one kind of relationship. Basotho will remember him fondly, and I believe I'm yet to get much more compelling stories and people who will talk about things, personal experience, first-hand experience that they got to experience with him.
Rapelang Radebe, thank you so much indeed for joining us this evening and helping us get a story from Lesotho about the arch and his influence there. And it does sound like his love spread right around the world, particularly in this mountain kingdom. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.